Welcome back. This is Module 2. Today we're going to be talking about checking your progress through the process, your progress on your commercialisation over 6 months, and making sure what tools we use. We call it the transition audit. That is making sure that you've exited R&D and you stay in commercialisation. And we also have all the other things, all the tracking metrics that we use to make sure you're staying there. We use this before we start a project, and those 7 points are needed before you start a project. But more importantly, as we do project status review every month, we want to make sure that you can meet all of these criteria and tick them off. So this is all about testing and tracking you for the life of your project to make sure that you can hit the marks that you've set for yourself. All of this needs to be in place well before you start your project. And so we won't start a project if we can't meet the transition audit. We use our 7-point transition audit checklist, and you can ask me for this at the end of this program. Now, if you're not ready, you might be wasting your time and money, and you must also maintain this all through the program as you're doing it. So don't get started if you can't meet it. What we do is just say, let's defer you until you're ready. Every project status review, we're checking in on these 7 points to make sure that your project is still constant, still relevant, and still measuring towards the same metrics. This keeps the project alignment, and it stops any sort of drift that you might have, because you will get distracted. People will come up with other great ideas, and they'll try and shift you away from what you're set to do, because your commercial model might not be the optimum model they want, and they might want to change that. So let's see how we go. These 7, not in any particular order, but I do them in order. The first one is proof of concept. You don't need to have a prototype to do this, but you do need to have a product that or some sort of concept that you can prove that it will work. So a proof of concept could be a purely mechanical thing. It could be online in an AutoCAD CAM program. It could be a formulation. It could be a taste test. It could be a lot of different things depending on what your product is. Proof of concept also needs to have validity, and it needs to be able to have an independent regulatory authority, if you need one in that industry, to say, yes, we would approve it based on that. The next one is market validation. It's a little bit more than just a market validation. What we look for is, can you still say that the project, the problem that you solve is still there? The people that have the problem would still solve it the same way they currently solve it and are looking for a change, what they would pay for that change in the way they do this, how much it costs them at the moment, how much it would cost them to use yours, how much would it cost them if they choose not to solve the problem and they live with it. And then we also look towards the market side of things, and we're asking questions like, how big are your competitors? If you have 3 very large competitors, they may actually be able to suppress you from entering the market. But if you've got 100 different competitors locally, nationally, globally, and they're all much of a muchness and can't differentiate themselves, and you have a differentiation point, you have a really good positioning strategy for that. So we're looking at the market validation, and we need to document that. Having an independent market validation is even better, but not at all times. That's going to cost money, and so you may not be in a position to pay for that early, but you will later on. We then need to look at pricing, costing, and sourcing. We understand what costing is. You're going to have to buy these ingredients to mix or to components to build. The pricing is what you're going to sell it for, and in between is your margin. Is there enough margin in there to make this worthwhile? What we look for as a general rule is 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, which is fixed costs, variable costs, and other costs. Other costs might be profit, taxes, things, unforeseen provisions for a warranty and everything else. So 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 is a good way of measuring what your product could be. Your sell price is not the retail price, but actually the price you're selling for if you're not retailing. And the sourcing is just as important. Sourcing includes letters of confirmation from people who will supply you, suppliers who will give you the components or ingredients that you need to build what it is you're building. But also there's more to it than that. You need to have regulatory authorities. You need to identify who those regulatory authorities are in order to approve what it is you're doing so you can enter the market. In some industries, you can't just walk in and start up. You have to have approvals. And so you need to identify who they are, what the process is, how long it takes. And like medical products, it could take 8 years to get trials done. And so therefore you can't expect cash flow within 12 months. So all of those sort of things are very important for you as you go forward, and you need to have those documented. Number 4 is R&D closure, date and cost. So the R&D is not an infinite thing. The reason why you started commercialization is because you're ending the R&D, or you're getting close to ending the R&D. We'd like to be able to close and lock the R&D door and move you into commercialization. In order to do that, we have to have a finite date and an amount you're going to spend. So you're going to say between now and next February, we're going to spend this much money. And that's going to be the date. And then we lock out our R&D, and what we've got is product iteration 1, and anything that comes in the meantime that people say, well, could you put a different handle on that? Could you move this? Could you make it a different color? That will be product 2. It won't be product 1. So you lock in what you've got. Number 5 is ownership and protection strategy. You need to have something. It doesn't have to be a patent. So you might have a file list of non-disclosure agreements. You might have waiver of rights agreements for people working in your organisation. You might have non-compete agreements for people, contractors, and other parties you're liaising with. You might have all these types of agreements all bundled up and put into your due diligence file that protects you until you have drafted your due diligence, your provisional patent, and you have that ready to go. And what we normally do if you're raising capital is we do that on the day you raise the capital. So that way you've got a full 12 months in order to get your project to earning enough money so you can pay for your patents. Number 6 is your path to early cash flow. So what we're aiming at is 1 of 4 cash generating transactions, which might be a modest capital raise, distribution agreement, license agreement, or a trade sale. Only those 4. You must pick one when you're with our program, and we recommend that if you're going to do this yourself, you only pick one of those. You don't deviate from that without a very, very good reason. A sound reason would be is if you can't realize that one, then you would shift your thinking and rewrite your entire transition order in order to have this. So path to early cash might be a distribution agreement in your country or your local area, your state. It doesn't matter what the jurisdiction is, but you need to define what that is. And then once you've got that, you might then say, in our program, for instance, we run 6 months. So it's regardless of how many cash generating transactions you get. The more you get, the better. But the first one you must get, once you've done that, you pick another one. It could be you've got a distribution agreement first time around. You might now go for a license agreement. It might be locally or in another jurisdiction, or it could be a trade sale. It doesn't matter. Whatever you've decided on, you then pick. And once you've done that, we then roll the next one on, and you're focused only on one. That's important. And the whole idea is when you get 5 or 6 or 7 of those done, and you're starting to get cash flow, then you're in a much better position to actually roll out your project as getting you closer and closer to pre-scale, which is the end of the early stage commercialization phase. Early stage commercialization runs from ideation, where you've formulated the idea and you locked it in, to pre-scale, where you've decided, okay, now we're going to bring in venture capital, private equity funds, and they're going to look at our project and scale it. Number 7 is, what exit do you have for you and for other parties that you've brought in? Now, this is an important thing. Nobody's going to get into your project unless they can get out. So you need to understand that given that an exit must be there, and for yourself as well, or for your family or whatever, you don't necessarily have to take it, and nor do they. But if you determine what those, you might have several milestones of a go, no-go position or a sell, buy position. And when I say sell, buy, I mean the investor might actually be the person that buys the rest of the project from you at a much higher price, because at that point there, you will have cash flow. So you've determined all of that. You might also take your project and trade sale it to a publicly listed company, and instead of getting cash, you get shares. So you're swapping shares. It's called script for script rollover. You get your shares and swap for their shares, and as a result, you've got a bundle of shares which can be cash at any time simply by phoning up your broker and saying, sell, and that's it. You've got cash in the bank. So it makes it easy when you've got liquidity, such as with public listed shares. So there's your 7 points. That's all in a transition audit. It's a checklist that we use, and we use it before we start a project, and then we check on this month by month every time we do a project status review meeting, or PSRs as we call them. So now I'll get you into the next module, which is commercial modelling. So I'll see you on the next one. Thank you.